And here's the thing. If you have solid projections in your business that show promise of future growth and the other factors I'll talk about in this video, banks will be willing to lend to you. They understand that today's startups will become tomorrow's success stories. So let's go over the three main business factors that influence your funding results, which will be your business foundation, industry, and history. The first important factor is going to be your business foundation. So there's a couple different factors within this, but the most important one is going to be your actual entity setup. This means having an LLC, S Corp, or a C Corp that you'll be using to apply for the funding. This will produce much, much better results than a sole prop, and that's because it just seems a little bit more credible as a business entity. You're setting up the entire structure so that you can run your business, and the banks usually feel a lot more comfortable lending to these types of corporate structures versus a simple sole prop. So I recommend that you set up an LLC. This is usually the simplest entity structure. You can get it in 2 weeks or less. It doesn't cost that much money. You'll get much better results when it comes to your funding. As far as other actual foundation pieces, you need to have things that will make your business look more credible to the banks. So it can be things as simple as having a business email. This is something that you're actually going to pay for. So I wouldn't recommend having your business@gmail.com, for example. It's getting something at mybusinessname.com. So for example, my email, pierreultimatefunding.com. So that's how you would want that set up. Info, support, your name, mybusinessname.com. So that's how you want to have an actual email set up. Then you also want to have a website. The banks will actually be looking for an online presence when you go and apply. They'll be looking to see if you have a website, what your service is about. And so if they can see some kind of online presence, that's another check that they can mark off on your application just to make sure that you're actually an established business, you're credible, and you just look that much more serious. So these are a couple different foundation pieces that will already help you get much better results with your funding. The second factor for your business setup is going to be the business industry. So the banks, when they extend money out to you as a loan, this is actually an investment for them into you and in your ability to actually pay back these loans. So they want to evaluate the risk of their investment. And part of this risk is actually which industry you're operating in. And to them, some industries are considered riskier or less risky just based on a couple different factors. And they tend to be, how much does it typically cost to run this business? Is there large overhead every single month just as a basic expense? Is there high revenue potential? Are there legalities involved? Is it a new industry category, for example? So these are all factors, but usually the low-risk industries are those that have low overhead, they can be run online, and there's large revenue potential. So the bank's favorite industries to lend to are going to be marketing, e-commerce, and coaching, consulting. These are the favorite industries because they can be run online, there's usually not that much large overhead, and there's huge revenue potential. You can really scale it quite a bit. So these are the industries that the banks like the most. If you fit into these categories, you're going to have a much easier time to qualify for funding, which is great. But if you're not in these industries, it's not the end of the world. Just know that you do need to most likely have other factors that are going to help supplement your application. So if you're in one of the other categories, there are certain industries that are considered potentially high risk. So if you're in investing at all, for example, this is considered very risky. The banks don't want to lend because to them, lending is already an investment, right? So if they're lending to an investment, they usually don't like to do that. So anything with capital or crypto, those are usually high risk. So they most likely will not lend to it. If you're doing real estate, that's a different factor just because you're actually lending to an asset. There's an asset backing the loan. But if you're not actually doing real estate, you're just investing into something, it's usually very difficult to get that funding. So that would be one. And then the other risky categories might be anything involving legalities. So potentially cannabis, gambling, and a lot of different things such as those. But if you're in a new industry or something that is potentially federally banned or a little taboo, for example, these are going to be industries that are considered high risk and also very difficult to get funding from. Some other ones could be those that are regular businesses, but they have a lot of expenses, making it a little bit higher risk for the banks. So this might be real estate or trucking, for example. There's a lot of expenses just to run the business. So for real estate, you have to buy these large properties. And for trucking, you have to buy these large pieces of equipment and you have to run the equipment. It breaks down. So they're typically higher risk industries to actually run them. So it could be a little bit more difficult to get funding, but it's definitely not impossible. And if you're in a high risk industry, what you could do is set up a separate business entity for consulting, for example, and then consult your original business so that they're both working together. You can get funding through your consulting business to actually help supplement your whole ecosystem there. So that's one way to potentially get around the high risk industry category. But overall, if you're in a low risk industry, it'll be a lot easier. If you're not, then you most likely have to have other things really helping you boost your application to still get good results. But it's not the end of the world. So that's number 2. So the final factor will be your business history. This breaks down into the actual length of operations in your business as well as the credit history on your business. So for the actual length, longer definitely is better because you're most likely more established. You've been running it for a while. It's stable. So that will be a lower risk for the banks. So if you've been established for a long time, the banks will feel more comfortable lending to you. And if you've been established for more than 2 years, you can actually get more lending options because once you hit over 2 years, the banks will allow you to now apply for business loans and business lines of credit. If you haven't hit 2 years yet, you really most likely are just limited to business credit cards. But even with business credit cards, you can still get a lot of funding. You get 0% offers. So there's a lot of benefits to them. You're just limited to that. Once you're over 2 years, you can then open up to more options. So longer is better. But even as a new LLC, you can still get great funding results. You just need to really make sure that you have everything set up correctly, and they'll be weighing a little bit heavier potentially on the business credit side of things. So if you've been established for longer, the business credit won't matter as much as the other factors. But as a newer business, you want to lower the perceived risk as much as possible by potentially showing some on-time credit history. So the actual credit history of your business that's attached through your EIN number. So your credit history can report to the business credit bureaus, which are Experian Business, Equifax Business, and Dun & Bradstreet. And you need to establish history so that you can actually establish a score and have something to show to the banks. And the way to do this is to either have business debt with on-time payments. So if you have business credit cards, for example, you can also purchase trade lines through certain vendors, or you can actually establish history through online Net30 vendors. So there are certain retailers online that allow you to purchase their products on Net30 terms, which means that you can buy now and pay later within 30 days. By doing this, you're establishing a debt with that company. So once you make that payment, you then pay the debt off, and now you have that on-time payment on your business credit report. So you can do this to actually create that history and show on-time payments to then lower the perceived risk for the banks. You'll need at least 5 reporting on your report to actually establish that business credit report and show it to the banks. It's more important to actually have business credit established than the length of history. On the personal side of things, you really need to have at least 2 years of history to be in a good spot, the minimum. But on the business credit, even if you just have business credit, you're already going to stand out from a lot of applicants because most people applying don't even have that set up. So that's how you work with the business history. Ideally, the longer the better. But even as a newer business, I'd recommend establishing the business credit history to offset that newer business factor right here. So those are the three factors that the banks are looking for when it comes to your business when you go to apply for the business financing. So once you set yourself up correctly with these three categories, you can still get a lot of funding, even as a new business or if you have low cash flow. So hopefully this helps you out. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think, and be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can see more videos just like this one and help you get the funding you need to scale your business to the next level.